Hello folks, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back. And in this video we're going to replace the distribution or the timing belt of a Ford Pinto motor. So let me show you where that belt is located. The distribution belt is hidden behind this cover, and you need to release about 3 bolts to get this off, and then you can just flip it off basically like so, and then it comes off. And here is the distribution belt. And the distribution belt is a key element in the timing of the complete engine. It actually synchronizes the camshaft and the crankshaft so that the valves are opening and closing at the right time when the piston is in the right position. So that's why it is a critical element in your vehicle. If you don't change this belt in time or after a certain amount of mileage, then it may snap, and if it snaps, you may have a disaster in your hands. It could destroy the engine. The pistons could be hitting the valves, and then you're really in deep trouble. The normal interval to change the belt is about every 60,000 kilometers or every 3 years. And if you're going to change the belt, make sure you have a good quality belt of the right dimensions and the right proportions, and at the same time you might want to change the tensioner, because that is keeping the tension on the belt, and that has some wear and tear as well after 60,000 kilometers. So I'm always changing this at the same time because it is a low cost item. The timing belt is driven by the crankshaft. So there's a pulley all the way underneath here that drives that belt. The belt is then routed over the auxiliary shaft, which is also holding typically here the distributor. Now I don't have it on here for the moment because I'm changing it to an electronic one, so that's why you don't see one. But it drives the auxiliary shaft, and the auxiliary shaft drives then the distributor. Belt goes up all the way to the top where the camshaft is, and it drives the camshaft. Now this camshaft is a bit of a special type because it's an adjustable timed camshaft. It's not the standard stock camshaft, and you will see in a few minutes what the difference is. And then the belt comes back down and it's routed over this tensioner and then all the way back down to the crankshaft. So it is important that this is done properly. If you're going to replace the belt, it's very important that all the pulleys are in the right position at the moment when you remove the belt, and that they stay in that position while you're putting a new belt on. Do not rotate any of the pulleys once you're in that condition. Otherwise, you will have a problem. Now, there are 2 methods to do this. You can use the absolute solution, which is based on using the markings that you have on the engine, or you can use a relative solution, which is you making marks yourself on the different pulleys on their position. So we're going to look at both options. But first of all, we need to talk a bit more about the crankcase pulley. And before I forget, removing the timing belt does not require the engine to be lifted out of the car. Now in my case, the engine is out just because I'm doing other work on it, but you can do that work very well when the engine is in the car. You may have some sore knuckles, but it's very well doable. On the crankshaft pulley, you have markers, and they are engraved onto that pulley, and there is a pointer on the engine block itself. So the biggest groove or marking, which I call it white here, needs to be aligned up with the pointer. Okay, that means that the cylinder is in its top dead center, and this is for cylinder number 1. Now this being a 4-stroke engine, the crankshaft will have to rotate 2 times, and it will pass 2 times top dead center to complete the 4 strokes. So it might be that if you have it in this position, that cylinder number 1 is at top dead center at the end of its compression stroke, just ready for ignition, or it may as well be at the top dead center at the end of the exhaust stroke. So that's why you may have to turn this depending on what method you're going to use, the absolute or the relative marking method. Anyhow, no matter what you're going to do, you will have to remove this pulley off the crankshaft because you have to get to the belt in the back. And to do that, you have to remove this bolt here. Now the easiest way to do this is with a pneumatic socket that comes off very easily and turn it anti-clockwise. If you cannot do that, then block the engine and just use a wrench with a socket 19. You can remove the bolt. Now you should be able to pull the pulley off. However, that can be tough. So you might need what we call a pulley puller to pull that pulley off, and I'm sure you all know on how to use that. I typically put the bolt back in so that the pin in the center here can rest on the bolt, and then I can pull off that pulley, and then the pulley will come off very easily. Now I have it aligned, as you can see, and now I can take this off. I took it off before because I didn't want it to waste too much time. Now in the back you also have a washer, and pay attention to the way it's been fitted. It's a bit concave, and there you find the timing belt running over this sprocket. So let me put this one back now because I want to talk to you about the two methods, the absolute and the relative way of positioning the pulleys and marking the pulleys before we remove the belt. So the first method is all about the absolute method. So the first method is the absolute method to position all the pulleys in the right position using the markings that are available on the engine block and on the pulleys themselves. You already have seen the marking on the crankshaft pulley. So now let's have a look on the markings on the camshaft pulley. Now the camshaft pulley that I have on this engine is a bit special, so we can't really use the standard markings because this is a fast road camshaft and I can adjust the camshaft or the timing of that by rotating this pulley a bit or adjusting the pulley. I can give it more or less advance. So let me take this bolt off and then you can actually see it. Now normally on a normal standard engine you would see right here what we call the mountain and then the moon, and it's a marker. Let me show you what that would be. And here is that normal pulley that you normally have. So if your first cylinder is in top dead center and you have it on your crankshaft pulley marked, and this pointer here, which is part of the pulley which is on your camshaft, is pointing to a dot which is knocked into the back of the cylinder head, then, and those are aligned, then you're in the right position. So rotate the engine clockwise until, so you need to rotate the crankshaft until this pulley has moved around and that the white mountain or the marker or the spin aligns with the dot in the back of the cylinder head. And then you should also check that your crankshaft marker is also at top dead center. If you are in this position, then you know everything is aligned right and your first cylinder is at top dead center at the end of the compression stroke. And you can check that the rotor on your distributor is pointing to cylinder number 1. So once you have your crankshaft pulley lined up and you have your camshaft pulley lined up where the mountain points right on top of the moon, the marker on the cylinder block, then you're in a good position, and at the same time of course your distributor is pointing to cylinder number 1 for ignition. Then you're good and you should keep this in this position, and now you're ready to remove the belt. However, I'm not going to do this because I don't have this kind of a standard pulley on it. So what I'm using is the relative method. I'm doing exactly the same things. I'm placing my main pulley onto top dead center and make that alignment. And then I use the pen to make a marking on this teeth right here. And I mark the teeth and I also mark the corresponding part in the back there, the part that doesn't move. And I also marked it here on the auxiliary. There's a mark there and a mark there. So as long as these marks line up, I'm fine. So the next step we're going to do now is to loosen up the spring or the tensioner over here. You need a special socket for that. This is using a 12 spline socket. If you don't use anything else because you're going to damage that screw. So I'm going to loosen that up, and then we're going to loosen up the bolt here which is holding the tensioner, and then basically the belt will become loose and we will be able to take it off. Now make sure that none of the pulleys is moving while you do that. Okay, and undo that. Next we're going to loosen up this bolt here, so that will allow us to move the tensioner back and forth a bit. Now if you're not going to replace the tensioner, there's no need to remove everything here, but I will in my case. So for that you're going to need a socket 13, and then you can actually unlock it. There we go. And that should allow me to move up the tensioner, you see, like so. So I'm going to move that up a bit, and then I'm going to lock it back in place with the bolt so I can remove the belt. Now I can take the belt off. Now before you can take off the belt, you have to remove the pulley on the crankshaft, the washer, and then just work your way through it, making sure you don't rotate any of the pulleys, because that would not be very good with it. And then you should be able to slide it out in the bottom. It can be a little bit tight, but there you go. And that's it, that's removed. Now I'm going to remove the tensioner completely because I'm going to put a new one up. So, and now remove the tensioner bolt and we can replace it. And here it is, our new tensioner. So we're going to put it up and make sure that the spring fits properly over that little stud like this. That's how we want to have it. And then we will lock this in place. And now we'll move it up and we'll put the bolt in. So now we need to pull it all the way forward so we can actually put the belt up. And tighten that nut a bit so the spring doesn't push it back. So before putting a new belt on, make sure the belt is exactly the same. So check that out, guys. That's important. Now if you're going to fit the new belt, make sure that the letters that are on it are facing forward. So if you stand in front of the engine, you should be able to read them. They should not be upside down. If you're going to refit the old belt, maybe that's what you want to do because you worked on the cylinder head, then you should have marked the direction of the belt and then put it back in the same direction, because these teeth, they will have some wear and tear on it, and you don't want this to be reversed. All right, so now let's put the new belt up. Now to put the belt up, we'll start from the bottom and we slide it on that pulley. Make sure the teeth fit nicely. Then we'll make sure we get a snug fit on the auxiliary shaft, and you saw it moving a little bit, but I'm checking my alignment, it's still all right. And then move that up and still have it snug fit on the teeth on the camshaft. There we go. It should really fit nicely. But don't rotate things, okay? Now I can see I need to move this a bit more backwards. Like so, and then we can move it over the tensioner and the belt is on. So make sure everything fits nicely, that all the teeth are in the grooves, that this is a snug fit, and that your markings, whatever you used, relative or absolute, are still lined up. So I'm going to check. This is still lined up. My pulley is still lined up. Over here on my crankshaft, I need to check, but I'm sure it's going to be still okay. For that, I need to put that pulley up, and that's still all right. So it still is where everything used to be. So do a last check that all the teeth fit properly, that we have a snug connection here. Don't rotate anything. And now we can actually lock that up. We can put the pulley back up. Like so. And now we can actually release the tensioner, and we'll do that very gently. And now you can see it's moving out and it's putting tension on the belt. I'm not going to lock these bolts down yet. First of all, now we need to rotate the engine a couple of times to make sure that everything is all right. Now to rotate the engine, I'm going to put back up the pulley. And we'll rotate it at least 3 times. 2 times should be enough, but I like to do it at least 3 times. And we do it clockwise. And then we should be double checking if everything still lines up properly. You might want to do this with the spark plugs removed. So here we go. That's 1 time. This is now twice. I'm going to do it 1 more time. And now that is 3 times. And I should do it 1 more time. I can see that. All right. So everything should now line up properly. So markings, markings, and the marking. So we're good to go. And now we can tighten up this bolt. And we'll put it to torque afterwards. And we will also tighten the bolt on the spring. There we go. We'll have to refit the cover on the camshaft. Now in your case, if you have a normal camshaft, that won't be necessary. And that's all there is to it, guys. Nothing more. So that's a piece of cake, right? Very quickly done. All what's left now, of course, is to tighten up this bolt here on the crankshaft. I think this is around 60 Newton meters if it's an 8.8 rated bolt. And then, of course, we still need to bolt down this to torque, and we'll bolt down the other bolts to torque, and then we'll put the cover back on, and then we are done. So I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.